digitaljamsessions.com.
Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam session. Today we are joined once again by Imre from Bossa Studios, and he has with him Sylvian. And we also have with us Emily from Spirit AI. Hello and welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So I wonder if, for the record, you can introduce a little bit more about who you are and what you do. Imre, since you are the regular who is returning, would you care to go first?
Of course, not a problem. I am Imre. I am one of the co-founders of Bossa Studios, game-making studio in Shoreditch, London.
Wonderful, thank you. And Sylvian?
Hello, I'm Sylvain Cornillon. I am the CTO at Bossa Studios, game-making studio in Shoreditch, London.
You got the wording exactly right. Well done. Emily, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Spirit AI? Because previously I have known the company under a different name. So why don't you explain a little bit about what you're up to?
That's right. We're doing AI focusing particularly on character and personalities to support gameplay. So how we can make characters interactive in ways they haven't been before, convey emotion, convey personality more richly.
If I recall rightly from the last time I spoke to you, it felt very much like I was bullying the poor robot.
Yes. Characters that can understand when you're being mean to them is just one of the many possibilities.
Indeed. So what I wanted to talk about today with you was the fact that we seem to be living in the sci-fi futures that we all thought we were just seeing in games and in the movies. And I know that you know, certainly for anybody who works in the games industry, we all tend to be, quite interested in some of these fictional ideals that we bring to life in our games. And we're now getting into an era where actually we're seeing a lot of this technology become an everyday part of our lives. And I know that we've got things like, Ready Player One is coming out soon. We've got things like The Ghost in the Shell. And there's a lot of exploration of technologies that for most of the mainstream public, they are watching these things and thinking, wouldn't that be cool? That just looks really cool and that's a really nice idea. But for us, in our little bubble of technology, actually a lot of these things are already here and now. And I wanted to start out with the example of kind of where we're seeing some of these technologies that already exist and that are already being explored. And I suppose AI and chatbots is an obvious starting point, in as much as, this is where you currently play. This is your playground. It already exists. It's not some fictional, operating system like we saw in the movie Her. It is actually a reality for you. So I'm curious, Imre, from your perspective, when it comes to what you're experimenting with at Bossa, if you'd like to talk a little bit more about how these things are a reality for you.
I think it is a reality. By the way, I have a theory that Elon Musk is actually a robot sent back from the future. That is the only explanation, because otherwise it would make me feel really bad at how clever that guy is. So I have to go with the story that he's a robot. But a lot of these things are reality. I mean, if you look at self-driving cars and how exciting that is going to be from a geek point of view, and how transformative it is going to be if you look at the transportation industry. But even if you just look at, obviously, chatbots, everyone is talking about this, that all of our apps are going to be replaced. And we already have some more generic applications. Of course, we have Siri and the Google Assistant, which, by the way, I'm using. And it's really nice that I can say, by the way, that, can you remind me what was the name of the old Smurf in this? And it answers back. It's really useful, by the way. That's a very important thing when you're sitting in a pub and you have to find out. And
that's called cheating on your pub quiz. But go on.
But if you look at more practical applications of this, just look at the company called, I think, XAI, who does the assistant which books meetings. I think, Tanya, you are using it, and I've been using it for a while now. And again, like these kind of like sneak up on us, right? We don't even realize, but we already have customer support which listens to the call and orients the person on the other side of the line. And so these things kind of snuck up on us, and this sci-fi didn't come in a big robot war, but it's kind of like with an everyday iteration of our tools and services becoming better and better and better. And for most people, they don't even realize that there's AI behind.
It's interesting that you say this because, first of all, in response to your thing about using artificial assistants, I've actually seen people on the street arguing with their phone, literally just shouting at their phone in an argument because they're shouting at Alexa or Siri. So I do think that people are beginning to kind of allow these things to become an everyday part of their life. But the thing that I find really interesting, I'm going to throw this one at you, Emma, is the fact that actually, and I've said this a couple of different times now at different events when we're speaking about things, and I find it really interesting that back in the 80s and kind of the early 90s, we saw in pop culture this attitude towards science fiction and technology, in fact, that was very much a generalistic case of, all technology is bad. All computers are bad. They will destroy the world. They will destroy us. If we let them have any kind of control of our lives, they will essentially destroy us. Terminator, you look at Lawnmower Man or any of these other kind of movies of the 80s and the 90s where if you mentioned technology, it was bad and it was evil. And that was the general attitude towards technology in general. If you had have asked somebody back then, hey, how do you feel about having a permanent piece of technology that's tracking you in your pocket all of the time? Or, how do you feel about wearing some technology on your body? People would have looked at you in horror and, it would have been quite a visceral response. But now we're at a stage in society where actually our perceptions have shifted somewhat. And I do think that Imre is a classic example in as much as, this idea of using artificial intelligence assistants to schedule meetings like Amy from the guys at X.AI and not really having any kind of concern with that, being totally at ease with the idea that actually it is saving me time. It is making me more cost efficient because I am able to schedule more meetings or be more facilitative with my time, in the same way that somebody might use a chatbot because they're saying, I want to be able to serve more customers. And by doing this, it allows me to be able to facilitate my customers more speedily. And so there's this change of attitude and emotional interaction with technology. And I'm curious, Emma, to hear from your perspective if you have seen that same reflection in the work that you're doing and the way that people interact and respond when you even say that, hey, I work in AI or I do things with AI.
Well, I think people tend to have something that they want out of an AI experience in games, which is about an emotional connection. And people tend to ask me when I say I'm working in this area, they ask me things like, do the characters ever do something that you didn't anticipate? Are they going to respond to anything that I do? Are they going to really notice the nuances of my interactions with them? And people have different ways of asking these questions, but it keeps coming back for me to a desire to create a connection with the gameplay that is emotional and humanistic and focused on feeling connected rather than a very kind of technical interaction.
And do you think that is something that we're beginning to see more of an acceptance in terms of that ability to allow technology into our lives and to allow it to make, not necessarily life-changing decisions or, life-impacting decisions, but certainly some major decisions on our behalf?
Well, certainly, and often in ways that we're not even fully conscious of, right? I mean, one of the sort of life-changing things for me has just been the existence of Google Maps and the ability to get directions to go someplace, and that's revolutionized my life. And I don't even think of that as being, it's so natural and so normal to me now that I don't even really think of that as a weird sort of special technological thing. It's just, my phone is able to do this for me. But, it has changed where I'm willing to go and when I'm willing to go, especially if I'm a woman traveling alone. It makes a huge difference to what my life is able to be. So I think when people see that level of advancement and those features kind of becoming normalized in their lives, it feels quite comfortable to accept that, I think.
Okay, so I'm curious then, we're talking about this idea of the use of data and the collection of data and the fact that, yes, actually, we do share an awful lot of data about ourselves with, companies and technologists who are using that data in interesting and meaningful ways when it comes to crafting experiences or, perhaps advertising to us. But I'm curious from your perspective, what you see as the inherent values of bringing that technology and that a fusion of data into what we're doing with AI. Because it's all well and good to say, hey, I want a map and I want to know how to get from point A to B. But it's a kind of a different proposition when you say how many people are asking to get from point A to B and how many of them are taking a shortcut because actually they've figured out that there's a shorter route to take or they don't want to go past that certain dark corner or whatever that thing is. And then changing and adapting the experience and the interaction because of the data that's been collected?
I think we can argue about data, but the reality is that you can't stop progress, right? It's like self-driving cars. Like, people can argue that it's going to be really sad that all the cab drivers are losing their jobs, and from their point of view, of course, it is tragic. But it's the same happened with the invention of the car and the invention of the steam train, when people who bred horses lost their jobs, right? And I'm like, you can't stop it. And I think the same is happening with data, and especially with big data. And there's a big arguments about who owns the data, especially with Google DeepMind's contract with the NHS. Mm-hmm. And these are questions arising. But what I'm worried about is not data collection. What I'm worried about is that not enough academic work and not enough political research is happening to this field. I'm more worried about that, because will it happen? Yes. Are we preparing ourselves for this new society which is driven by data, because everything will be? No. And you can see this now, that big corporations are all about collecting data. I firmly believe that the LinkedIn bought because of the data it represented. Skype is a big deal, especially the Skype, the professional version, because of the data. The Facebook conversation engines, because it's conversation data. And all of that data. Everyone is just so data hungry that now I'm hearing that people evaluate companies not on their profits and revenues, but the amount of data they have and the ability to collect more. So there's no point worrying about it, because it's inevitable. What I think we should worry about is that if there's enough work is happening to back that up. I don't know, Silvan, what do you think? But it's just...
I mean, there's obviously a lot of work that's happening, especially by corporation, by the way, like Microsoft and Google, about adding anonymity to big set of data, so they can use them and they can use the data, but it's not trackable to an individual. And we've seen recently with Apple against the FBI that corporations are fighting the corner of not sharing the data to everybody. And so, to some extent, having multiple corporations fighting around, building AI, which we have the big players with Google and Microsoft and Apple and Amazon right now. It's quite good that they're separated, because we know these data won't be shared, but they'll still gather all that data to make AI run, because AI right now, as it exists, neural networks, they run on data, and they're data hungry to a level that's not really understandable by the normal human being, because we learn very easily on very few examples, but neural network right now don't do that yet, and right now that's the battle. Is the battleground is the data battleground. But I'm not too worried about my private data being shared, because right now it's in the hand of corporation, not in the hand of government, and they tend to. It looks like they're fighting very hard to not share it with governments. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Imran, because I know that you're a huge fan of sci-fi movies, I'm going to throw this into the mix, and it's not a movie that we've discussed before, but I'm going to kind of throw in. First of all, did any of you guys watch The Arrival, the new Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner film? There was this really interesting point in the movie where they're talking about the approach to teaching this alien life form language. I'm not going to read the movie for anybody who hasn't gone to see it, but I do strongly recommend you go and see this movie. But there's this really interesting point where they say, one of the countries has been teaching the aliens through the use of a game, and the other team have been actually understanding the contextualization of language and teaching them language from kind of the ground up. And it's this interesting idea that actually if you teach somebody who doesn't understand English or doesn't understand your language through the use of something like a game, that ultimately you're teaching them only how to compete, because you're teaching them how to, compete against you to win. And so they're only really getting an understanding of conflict. And I'm curious, from an AI perspective, when we look at the data that's going into AI and we look at the things that we're teaching AI, whether or not there is any risk here, in as much as we should be thinking a little bit more contextually about what we're teaching the AI. You said, Sylvian, about how hungry AI is for data. Is it important, though, to think about what kind of data?
Yeah, it's obvious that it's the classic garbage in, garbage out.
I was trying to say it in a much more eloquent way.
It is necessary to look at what data gets fed into the system to be able to get something that is acceptable for all of us on the outcome. So we do need to look at the data that gets in, and that's the question around supervision of the data. It's a classic garbage in, garbage out problem. We do have to look at what data goes in the system, and that is quite a big problem because all these systems a lot of them now are being unsupervised, which means the companies are just feeding the data without looking, without tagging it, without saying whether it's good or bad, and the system just learns the patterns. And if there is bias in the pattern, there will be bias in what is learned. And so that is probably one of the most fundamental problems with the current systems. As far as what I've heard and looked, there is no real solution yet to all of that. A lot of people are looking at this, but it is a fundamental problem.
I think there is a different way to look at this. Is there a chance that there will be a general AI created which turns itself into a super AI and then destroys humanity? Yeah. Is there a chance that governments will use it to suppress opposition? Yes. Is there a chance that evil corporations sell us out as products? Yes. But will I be able to say to my phone that book me a restaurant in a cool Mexican place, and it does automatically? Yes. So on the whole, I think...
So as long as you can pick your restaurant, it's fine.
It's totally worth it. But look, the less of a jokey way, but yeah, I mean, there are very real dangers, but I look at it from a purely, entertainment and interactive entertainment is my field, right? That's what I do. And I look at it as a new way of telling stories and a new way of crafting narratives. And it's kind of like, I use the word meta an awful lot lately, but it's meta narrative when I don't even create a line, but I create a system which will deliver lines which create that emotional engagement I want to achieve, right? And that, as a creator, it is one part terrifying because I lose control and I can't go about my old ways. But if you put that away, it just opens up amazing opportunities. And I personally am really excited about this because I feel that as a storyteller, I can tell much better stories, and I think this is where it really matters, I can tell a much better experience because almost my story is secondary. What matters is how my player feels. And if I can create an AI-driven system, for example, which creates a unique experience where the player is truly in control, much more than prescribed interactive fiction, for example, as far as I'm concerned, that's awesome, and I'm very excited about that.
So you very much see AI as kind of a cog in the process versus necessarily seeing it as the be-all and the end-all of kind of a new game engine. You're seeing it very much as the piece that's doing the heavy lifting for you. Would that be a fair assumption?
Look, I'm looking at it from a much more naive point of view. I mean, Emily and so are much more knowledgeable about this. But from my point of view, it is the opportunity to both to create content and to serve content in a much more dynamic way, right? And in that sense, it is just a tool, right? It's just I'm going to be able to tell. Imagine this way: I'm a painter, and someone just invented a whole new range of colors, right? And how awesome is that? And that's how I see this. But I don't know. I mean, this is because I am the almost like the end consumer, right? I'm just an excited kid at the candy shop, and you are the one making the candies.
So, as the recipe holder, Emily.
Part of what appeals to me about this is, from a writerly perspective, characters really show who they are in dynamic situations when they're put into some context where they're having to make a decision or take a choice. And when you can create a story where the player is actually able to create those contexts, like the player is able to challenge the character, the player is able to be the source of the situation that the character is reacting to, you get a whole new way of exposing characterization that's not possible in any medium before. And I think that's really exciting.
Okay, so here's my question. With the movie Her, where we saw somebody in the form of Joaquin Phoenix fall in love with an operating system in the form of Scarlett Johansson, a lot of what we saw happen. That yes, Imre, you can chuckle. It happened.
If I can, any of the operating systems I know, or her, I don't know who I would fall in love first. I don't know. I mean,
you have lots of relationships.
Don't listen to Windows 10, but sorry, it's not exactly her, is it? sorry, Sci Fact.
But my question was this, which is, we see this obviously this kind of extended futuristic ideal of, you know, somebody being able to connect enough with artificial intelligence, so much so that they form a relationship. And I'm not suggesting that we're at that stage where somebody's going to literally fall in love with an AI. But what I'm going to say is that we already see reflections in culture, especially in places like Japan and Korea, where it is very much an isolated culture where people do tend to be a little bit distant from other human beings, and they are much more immersed in their technology. And we already see this kind of almost inability in some ways for people to have traditional relationships, and they are becoming much more dependent and much more reliant upon these interactions with technology, with games, with artificial personalities. And I wonder if we see this as a potential, you know, kind of emerging here and now. You know, we talk about this thing about sci-fi being actually no longer, you know, fiction, but actually being here. And I kind of already see elements and strains of her in society as it already stands. And I'm curious, Emily, to hear your thoughts on this.
I think I'm inclined to focus more on the upside of that, again, in that, yes, it's true that it's possible to become overly reliant on all sorts of distractions if you are unhappy with or not fitting in well to whatever else is going on in your life. And we see people become connected to all kinds of things, engaged in first-person shooters, engaged in, you know, immersed in book series for that matter. And we tend not to think of that as like, oh, this is evil. But there are people who spend a lot of their time engaged with some particular medium that speaks to them and makes them feel comfortable. So I don't think that is necessarily a new thing that we're seeing happen with the dawn of AI. On the positive side, I do see some potential for AI to provide kind of a human bridge for things that people have difficulty discussing with other human beings because they're afraid of the judgment. So there's been some interesting study around, you know, people who are willing to engage with a chatbot or something along those lines about trauma, about an embarrassing past situation, about something that they wouldn't be willing to talk to another person about, but because they know that the situation is artificial, it's more comfortable for them and they're able to engage in that back and forth. So I don't think that this is something that can be sort of simplistically framed as, oh yes, now we're going to get in robot friends and we're not going to be friends with other humans anymore. I think it's much more complicated than that. There's possibility for positive as well.
Absolutely. And Sophie, I'm curious to hear from you in terms of kind of the next step on, I suppose, from where Emily was kind of talking, is this idea that we begin to cultivate and curate for ourselves, you know, our digital identity and our digital self and what that is worth in the future economy of data. And I'm curious if there has been any thought at this stage as to how one's individual digital identity is being integrated into these data sets, or what the value is for the individual. Because I think there is some inherent conversation back and forth about the value of the digital self and how that is utilized in the digital economy.
Yeah, there is. I mean, to get to the outside, there is a very good episode of Black Mirror about the reproduction of a digital self into a real person, and a live example of that. I think the tools to handle your digital self right now are pretty much non-existent. The level of complexity it takes to even understand how visible you're on Facebook, and understanding that, the fact that e-safety lessons for my daughter cover Googling yourself and looking at what's there and realizing how already is quite an example of, people do not have control over that. And some European law added a regulation over being able to remove yourself from the internet. And that's proof that there is very little there. And the fact that your digital self is spread across so many corporations right now makes that even harder to handle. there's a lot of education around that needs to be done, but right now, again, it's also an open problem, and it's probably, as you said, with the fact that data is going to be shared with everybody, it becomes quite a big problem.
Okay. And Imre, do you feel the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to AI and kind of the interactions that we can expect to see with things like chatbot?
I think it's done already. I think it's post fact now. Like so many people have so much data. Even if someone is like actively trying to not hold back, there's just so much data, and it's quite scary if you look at it that way. And especially people with malicious intent. But even within AI, there are arguments that there are now technologies, for example, which can reverse engineer pixelated images. Mm. And I think they did some tests when they had a database, and in the database they had the original image. It had like a 90-something% that it finds it. And now they're getting to the next stage where even if they don't have the original image, they can figure out what's behind that. So it's crazy. You know, there are face recognition tools, which famously there's a Russian one, which the Russian Secret Service is using, and like large crowds of political demonstrators, and it can list everyone, and it can find on Facebook. So, you know, these are out of, it's already out. I guess the only question is how we're going to cope with it. But it's the same way. You know, when we started having cars, suddenly we had rules of the road, right? And at some point someone invented a seatbelt, and another company started to add that, and some of it was governmental, some of it was self-control, so companies decided to do something, all of them agreed. Some of it said the government said, no, you must have a seatbelt in your car. Mm-hmm. But these things take time. And again, what I worry about is not the technology. What I worry about is that if enough people in key positions act on this. And again, I gotta go back to Elon Musk and his idea for OpenAI. There's a reason why he's doing it, because obviously it's useful, but also there is this philosophical argument behind it that the power of AI is reduced if everyone has access to it. And so I think the fear is not the tool. The fear is how the tool is going to be used again. So, for example, if there is a super AI which know how to manage your money, if only rich people have access to it, their wealth will increase and everyone else's wealth will decrease over time. And so, but these are problems of society. This is not a problem of the tool itself. And again, as Emily, I myself, I'm looking at from a positive angle and looking at from an angle of a creator. And I'm just excited about the experiences I can create and the entertainment and escapism it can give to people.
And our role as, you know, more than technologists, as artists, I mean, as game creators and as, you know, TV series creators, is to put those problems out there so people can get used to understanding them and make educated decisions around them. Mm. So our games about AI, even though a lot of it might be pretend and the AI technology might not be conscious, but it's pretending to be conscious, we'll ask players how do they react to a conscious AI. Yeah. That's the same with, you know, games like Mass Effect, like TV series like Black Mirror and Her. These are arts help us understand those problems and slowly allow us to make the right decisions and the moral decision around them.
If you look at this, look at the TV series Humans by Channel 4, which is based on a fantastic Nordic TV show, great show. If you look at Westworld and a couple of other shows, like they are tackling this, and there is we are working on a game, and we very consciously chose that not only the technology is AI-driven conversation, but also the subject matter is about AI and about how AI fits in society, what are the role of an AI, how an AI will handle moral choices, like the classical one is that, you know, you have 5 people and 1 person on 2 tracks and which direction you send the train to. Like these kind of things is like we have to debate them, we have to talk about them, and as Sylvan said, as artists. But, you know, like as creators, it is our job to contribute to that discourse and encourage people to face these things and start talking about it. And this is, of course, just one of the many challenges society has, but we have to start talking about it now to prepare us for when it really hits. And it might be the next 5 to 10 years, it might be the next 10 to 50 or later, I don't know, but every estimation seems to suggest that in our lifetime, we're going to see some drastic changes. So it's our job to contribute to as much as we can.
Okay, so here's a question, and I'm going to throw this one at Emily to start with. But given that the reality of the situation is that we all, as whether we are creators or technologists, we all are in our little bubble at this moment in time. And the reality is that for the mainstream public, when you say AI, they just think sci-fi. They're not thinking about this in terms of the realistic application of AI in their own lives. And there's very few who actually utilize AI knowingly on a day-to-day basis, such as Imre and I would. And I am curious, therefore, Emily, from your perspective, speaking to an audience of people who potentially aren't as informed as we all are when it comes to AI and what the implication of AI is, I'd love to hear what you think, first of all, the potential impact of AI is, and ultimately what you would like to see happen.
Well, I think there are a couple of things to say here. One is we tend to stop thinking of things as being AI once we become used to them. Once they become sort of standard tools in our lives, we often forget that they were originally thought of as AI. And a lot of things that are kind of already happening in terms of data processing, understanding, planning, all of that started out as AI research and then just became just another app that you're used to. So I think for many people, the experience of bringing AI increasingly into their lives is not going to be kind of this cold water shock. It's just going to be more and more rich and complex behavior that you can expect out of your computing interface, out of your game experience, out of, kind of what you're able to add on to different aspects of your life. The kind of extreme, the idea of the fully self-aware AI that we regard as, kind of an entity that's worth respecting in its own personhood, that I think is still a ways away, but raises some really interesting moral questions. But I think there's a lot before we get to that. That's just going to look like more and more interesting kind of day-to-day experiences. And one of the areas that I'm most interested in for that, obviously, is games. And in particular, people's ability to interact with gaming characters in a way that feels much more expressive, much more emotionally connected than they have been able to experience before.
Okay. And Sofian, what's your perspective in terms of what you think the current impact of AI is and what you would like to see happen in the future with it?
I think the current impact, the fact that nobody freaks out when there is an echo advertising where you just talk to this machine and it actually answers you and nobody says, oh no, that's not working at all. It actually does work. We talk to machine every day now. We can talk to machine every day. So the impact of AI is everywhere right now. What's missing is almost the iPhone moment where there is some technology that gathers all those different systems from everywhere into one single product that suddenly none of the thing it does is amazing. We've seen them before, but it does it in such an integrated way that suddenly it's a step beyond everything. So yeah, what I'm waiting is that iPhone moment. Right now it's a lot of little systems doing a lot of little things, amazing things. At some point we're going to do that step up by just gathering all those systems together. It's not going to be a conscious AI, but it's going to be something that's so much further than what we're seeing now.
Okay. And Imre, what's your thoughts on this?
What Sylvain said. So it's actually, look, this is a slow process. And of course, the question is it a moment of, it's a slow process and we're all used to it, or are we the frog sitting in the pot and it's slowly getting to boiling temperature under us, right? And we just can't tell because it's a slow change. So it is going to be very interesting to see. And I think there will be some pivotal moments. But again, it's defining AI. When you tell someone that their car has AI, their phone, their services everywhere has AI, when they realize that when you call your bank, that was an AI, or what is AI becomes that. And I think when we're going to have the big step up will be when these kind of freely self-improving systems and general AI are created. Those are going to be the big upset moments when suddenly these are going to be stepping up. But until then, it's just going to be one cool gadget at a time. The next cool game will be using AI. The next game uses even more AI and it's more intelligent. And it's just going to be, every time we're going to be in awe and thinking, this is awesome. There's a whole new tool. I think it's all going to be positive energy and excitement. And I think the upset will come when those systems become this runaway self-improvement. And that's the moment where it's going to be scary, and that's the moment where it's going to cause, okay, what is a person, what is a whatever, and all of these debates will start. But in a good way, it will put our present squabbles about politics and about equality and all that into perspective. It's like, I think it's either a self-aware AI or an alien invasion is what's going to get rid of racism and sexism and everything. So, AI will do.
You're really hanging a lot on this.
I am.
He's just looking to the skies waiting.
It is. I guess that's the interesting thing, is that we are already using all these AI tools, and people don't even realize, because it was always from that kind of iterative process. And that's why we wanted to make this game and talk about this and ask those questions which classical sci-fi asks about what it is to be a person. And we haven't seen modern sci-fi tackled that aggressively like Asimov or C. Clarke did, is asking those questions. And I think those are stories that I personally want to tell. And it's quite wonderful that I can tell a story about what it means to be a human through talking about what it means to be an artificial intelligence, and do that whilst using the latest, craziest, awesomest AI technologies. I think that's kind of like a serendipity moment, right? When it's like, this is just brilliant.
So can you tell us the name of the game in question or not?
Not yet. We haven't announced it yet, but hopefully soon we will be. It's very exciting.
Do you have a date for the announcement, perhaps?
I'm not going to commit to anything yet, but I'm just going to say that we are working on some really cool stuff, and hopefully soon we can talk about it.
Okay, so watch this space is basically the answer. Okay. So as always, we like to give our listeners a way to find out a little bit more about what you're up to and follow you. And we ask you to do that by sharing with us your social media handle of choice. And if you would care to do that, Emily.
I'm on Twitter @mshort.
Okay.
Yes.
And Sylvia?
Yes, so I'm also on Twitter @SCO_game.
Wow. I am on Twitter as my name, Imre. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe and review. And follow us on Twitter @DigitalJam Ltd. DigitalJamSessions.com